Welcome to Toffee Blue View, your source for all things Everton. Gerry, Terry, Max, and no one else is here. All right. Everton's worst Premier League signings is where we're going with this video. And being kind of a fledgling Everton guy, I don't have as much experience. I wrote a couple names down, but I also wrote some other names down. I found various articles on the subject, and I tried to take a smattering. You guys may have some, though, because you have a lot more experience in this. So I want to start with you. All right. I think with the last segment, I think we began with Max, I believe. So Terry, Everton's worst Premier League signings from your point of view.
Depends really how you look at it. I really struggled with this when I found out we were going to do it as a topic, because you can think of some really poor footballers, but then a lot of the worst players that we brought in were they were for very low money, or we made the money back, so they didn't really do any damage. So you could look at Alcaraz or McGeady or players like that, and Cuco Martinez in there, but then you can look at it and go, well, McGeady was free and then didn't really do any damage. He just wasn't very good. Alcaraz was free. He did do a little bit of damage because he was very influential in costing us a European two-legged game. And Martina, not a very good footballer, but came in the side when he was needed and did as much as he could. But then you could then look at value for money and then say, all right, who came in for big money and didn't do anything? And then you're looking at totally different players then. I hate saying this because I rate him as a player, but Klassen, he was brought in.
One of the ones I wrote, yeah.
Didn't really play very much. Wasn't really up for it physically for the Premier League. Lost money on him, lost money on his price tag, and paid him a lot in wages to not play. So he's got to be in there, right? Fairly or harshly. The one I'm going to pick for that metric, so I've ruled out any players who came in on a free, even if they were terrible, because they came in on a free. You can't really be too annoyed at it. But a player who came in for decent money and didn't live up to expectations. He was by no means one of the worst players we've had, but he was a big letdown. Was James Beattie.
That's one of the ones I've got written down. So yeah.
James Beattie was our record signing at the time, and we at that time did not spend big. I think it was £6 million, which sounds laughable now, but
I wrote down 8 million. Actually, was it 6 or 8?
Yeah, it was 6.
Okay, then someone got it wrong.
He eclipsed Nick Barmby, who was 5.5. He was before him.
Wow.
So we were on the crest of a wave. We were playing really well. We were in the top 4, and we did finish in the top 4 that year. But in January, we needed that player to give us a boost in momentum, and to sign a big, strong target man centre forward, England international. It was just totally different to what we had, and I thought we came in and thought that's going to be a game changer. He's going to come in, and this solid team that David Moyes has built has now got goals in it. He came in, he was out of shape when he arrived. He didn't really suit Moyes' team, and he was the biggest waste of potential, I think, not in his career, but at Everton. I felt like he could have been a lot better at Everton. So, and he cost, at the time, decent money. So that is probably one of them if you sort of fiddle around with the what qualifies. So I'm going to put forward to the right honourable gentleman, James Beattie. It's the first name.
Gotcha. All right. Made 82 appearances for us as well. So, Max, got a name or two?
Right. Well, I've got a few names, but I want to start off with one before my time. Well, it was in 2000, I think he signed for us. I think, what will I mean, 4. But once you hear a supporter actually ran on the pitch and offered to take his shirt at Arsenal,
I've written this down too.
Alex Nyarko coming from Lens. I don't know how you just can't. His name it just isn't on your tip of your tongue. If a supporter runs on the pitch and says, "Lad, just give me your shirt," you're just not doing a good enough job. I could do a better job than you. Surely you've got to be considered as just one of the worst Premier League signings ever. A few more kind of from where I've got a better memory of it. Felipe Senderos, do you ever remember that monstrosity of a transfer? We signed some weird players.
Loads of straight low.
Yeah, like Lucas Neal, I wasn't a big fan of. Lars Jacobson. We had just really odd bod strikers. Ever remember João Silva? Just some young Brazilian kid who I think he made a few pre-season appearances, and Moyes hyped him up, but he never delivered. Trying to think, Magai Gay, possibly. The biggest letdown in that respect being that semi-final against Liverpool, where you wanted Drenthe to cause havoc down that left-hand side, and it ended up being Magai Gay. But which bit of a letdown, but he did put that nice ball in for Jelavic against Sunderland in the quarter-finals. Royston Drenthe, maybe you could push as.
I can't include a lone player because they didn't they're sort of cost neutral. So for me, a player who's a bad sign is someone who you bring in with big expectation and decent money. Doesn't have to be a massive amount of money, but spent money because he's going to change your team, and he just doesn't. So anyone who's on loan who was free, I can't include them. But
from that metric, I think you've got to pick Davy Klaassen, then, haven't you? I watched him quite a lot when he was at Ajax, and he really impressed me, and I still wish him well with his career now.
Yeah.
But what a flop that was, really.
Yeah. He was the first name I wrote down, and I didn't want to because I like him. He seems like he's got a good attitude. His recent interviews, he's been very blunt and honest, but the line about when Allardyce came in, all hope was lost or something, it was, I feel like that's kind of how all of us felt. He's very frank, which I kind of appreciate that. And he was respectful, or decently respectful of Unsworth, yeah. He was like, look, I disagreed with the fact that he thought I needed to be more physical. I still do, but, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, I actually agree with Unsworth. I didn't think you were physical enough. I agree. I didn't think you were athletic enough to play in the Premier League, but whatever. But Klaassen, definitely. I wrote down one that the only other one that I came up with, because again, I'm working with my brain, not yours.
Is it Yannick Bolasie by any chance?
No.
I was going to say value for money wise, you could push that.
Yeah,
that was just an absolute flop.
He's going to be up there, value for money wise.
That is a fair shout.
I mean, he did get injured, but he for that month.
You think about it, right? We signed him for those big games, for example, against Liverpool, against Manchester United, where he often put a good job in for Crystal Palace, and he got in. He blew out before those games even come up. Looking him out on loan, so.
Because right now it's not the type of segment where we're allowed to say it's not fair to include him because he got injured. That's not what this segment is. We're not saying it's the worst Premier League signings because they had no work rate. None of them did. Well, that's not true. Some of them got injured, and Bolasie did, and I think it's fair to mention him. I wrote down we didn't spend much on him at all, but only because Martinez hyped him up a lot, acted like I thought this guy was going to end up being a part of our first team setup, and he played one FA Cup game.
Lassina Traore?
Actually, no, but I thought about him too, but the fact that he scored a goal made me immediately push him to the side.
The fact he got injured in a bloody warm-up at Stamford Bridge got to factor into
that was kind of funny, though, sadly, in retrospect. Do you know who I'm going to say, Terry?
No, I was going to say Traore as well.
Leandro Rodriguez.
Oh, the Uruguayan.
Yeah. He was a player who he came in and Martinez kind of acted like, hey, this guy's going to play. This guy is ready. What a weird transfer. That was a really strange transfer for us to bring him in out of the Uruguayan league because it wasn't even the right river. You know what I mean? It wasn't even the river from Argentina. It wasn't River Plate from there. It was the river in Uruguay. And he wasn't even blowing up that league either. It was such a strange transfer. And that poor guy dealt with homesickness and depression. That's why I felt bad putting him on there. But Yeah. I don't
Another
know.
one that's similar to Klassen in wildly different circumstances, but like expectation and hype versus result, was Andy van der Meijden. Van der Meijden, when we signed him, was an absolute star. He was he was a winger for the Netherlands when they were like class. They were like world class at the time. Come from Inter, and we got him for a very small amount. I remember being like shocked at the time. Like, how are we even getting him, and how are we getting him for next to no money? And then obviously, he had a lot of personal problems when he was here. But like when you thought you were getting an absolute gem of a player, and then he just hardly played, and when he did play, it was it was interrupted all the time. So again, not a big price, but what you thought you were getting compared to what you got, he's got to be one of those disappointing signings.
He was on the pitch for the Gosling derby, so I don't know, he's in me good books for that. I think it's just that's my favourite game of all time. So
that's what I was going to say, Max. You pretty much forgive any player who's even connected in that in any way.
No, you know what? I don't forgive Gosling. I don't like the way Gosling conducted himself about leaving the club. Kind of sold himself off as a bit of a mercenary. But I wouldn't include him in our worst Premier Leagues. Well, where he was from Plymouth, wasn't he? We signed him from Plymouth, a young lad. He was a good player.
I think pound for pound, it has got to be Klassen, hasn't it? Like, it pains me because I spent all last year defending Klassen, thinking he should get a chance, and I still think he should have compared to some of the other players who were playing. But his brain was right, but his body wasn't. He was a good player, but just not for this league. It's happened to plenty of players who look great elsewhere. It's happened to better players than Klassen who come to this league and go, no, not for me. Doesn't suit me. And then they go elsewhere and carry on their careers. But for what we spent compared to what we recouped, it was the biggest loss I think we've made out of the list we've mentioned anyway. And a lot of wages for a player who wasn't playing. He was just training every week.
So I just want to ask Terry, right? Someone who was, I've seen highlights of him for Newcastle and for Tottenham. David Ginola only played one game for us. I know it was very late on in his career, but was it that much of a mismatch, him and Everton at the time?
Old, like we were into that at the time, like Gascoigne as well, and it's just to be honest, that's a little bit before my time. Like I was old enough to remember that, but I got into football quite late, so I didn't really see much of that. But I remember hearing about it, and it was just that was us at that point. It was like Allardyce's Bolton. Like you just sign these star players from different era and hope they might pay off for a season. But no, but people might even say that Gascoigne's one of them because he was a sensational player but didn't really do it at Everton. So
I saw a special on Ginola. There's like several different players. It's like a series on Netflix.
Yes.
I saw that, and it seemed like his attitude was very, very confident in himself.
Well, look at his 2 feet now. He played with a football, rightfully so, I think.
But it's the kind of thing where sometimes it seemed like if you have a certain attitude, though, that kind of thing may not mesh well with certain locker rooms.
I agree with that.
Tell me if these are fair. The other ones that I wrote down from this list. One of them is a loan, which immediately Terry's like, doesn't count. But by the way, Terry, I totally gave you a Southern accent just then. A Southern American accent. Doesn't count, man. But this one was talk about how this was a weird loan transfer, and it came around the time when we actually were getting a sponsorship. And so it's Li Weifeng. Apparently, like he had 2 appearances, came on loan, and everybody was talking about how it was just the stuff that I was reading is just that he was just a strange transfer at the time.
Yeah. I think one of the games he played, he was centre back alongside Joseph Yobo, and one was Nigerian and one was Chinese, so he got taken off because they couldn't understand each other. That's my favourite fact about Lei Wei Feng. He was terrible. That was part of a kit sponsorship deal, like with Keijan.
Yeah.
So okay, that was that. So it was a sponsorship thing. Yeah, it's interesting. Such a strange circumstance. So would you include? Do you think it's fair to include Per Coldrup on the list with one appearance but injuries? I think we got him. Again, I don't know if these amounts were correct. This said we got him for $5 million, and the idea of paying him $5 million per appearance seems a bit steep.
Do you want to take that, Max? Do you remember him? Because I do, clearly, but...
Not really, but about 2004, that wasn't it?
Yeah, he was brought in from Fiorentina.
Yeah.
I think he went back to... It was an essay or someone like that, but he was brought in by Moyes. And Moyes had the Midas touch for transfers for the most part. I can count on my hands the amount of bad ones he made because he had to be careful. But he came in, Kröldrup, and he was exciting at the time because he was like I think he was he was like a Danish international already, and he was a big profile player. Came in and he wouldn't play him. It was dead weird. Like everyone was like, why isn't he starting him any games? Like he's still playing Weir and Stubbs, and he's not playing this new player he spent decent money on. And he got one game at Aston Villa, and he couldn't head the ball. He was just. I think there was all rumours like we'd signed the wrong player. We'd scouted his centre back partner. I don't really believe that, but that was the talk at the time. And I think it's come out in other people's, in like certain players from that era's books. Like I think Weir, Stubbs, and maybe even Osman. Might be a little bit before Osman's time. But yeah, he got to training, and it probably a early version of what Klassen was, but obviously under different circumstances, where he got to England, and whilst he looked great somewhere else, like, oh, we can't deal with it here. He gets pushed off the ball by strikers, and Duncan Ferguson was in the squad at the time, so you can imagine in training Duncan Ferguson's trying to win headers against them, and Kröldrup must never have won a single one. Mm-hmm. But he went back in the January for like 3.6 million or something like that. So we recouped his fair amount of money and just moved on from him. But he's up there for bad buys, because for the same reason, more extreme version of my reasoning for Beattie, that came in for all right money at the time and just didn't fit. But was much more quickly moved on and tried again.
Max, were you going to say something?
I was going to say I don't want to piss Edward off, but I want to nominate Oumanias. Like I know obviously he kind of put the nails in the coffin of Koeman, and quite fittingly, but £13.5 million from Lokomotiv Moscow to like Russian Player of the Year, scored all these half full of opportunist goals, poaching in the penalty area, and I think one of his first, what was it? I think it was the Bournemouth, his first game, because I remember in the Leicester game as well. When he just showcases touch and it just like it goes out for throw-in, and you just like,
I remember
he just looked like a competition winner at first, didn't he? I think he's obviously kind of acclimatised a lot more now, and he does have a certain impact when he does come on. But at first, he just looked like a competition winner, and never 13.5 million.
I think he's worked his way off this potential list. I think if a year and a half, 2 years ago, he would have been easily. He wouldn't have been a topic to discuss. Just said him straight away. But
yeah,
no, he's grafted and like worked his way off this list. He can't be on there because he scored goals, he's impacted games, and 13.5 million. Well, seemed a lot at the time. Is not now. So no, still not a great player. Not in the Nias camp, but no, I can't. For me, I can't put him on a list of worst ever. Not now, anyway. He would have been number one not long ago.
Yeah, I agree. A couple years ago, you immediately jump and say, yes, he is the winner. Yeah. We don't even need to say anyone else because but now the fact that he's won us games, he's come on and literally almost by himself, gotten us points, especially last season in the dark days. I also, but Max, I don't think you're alone. That's why one of the reasons you saying that, I think there are a lot of viewers and listeners out there who are going to hear that and say, yeah, I nominate him because I have two eyes. I'm serious. I feel like you hear that. You see that on Twitter all the time. Yeah. People are like, yeah, I don't care. Yeah, sure, he scored goals. I don't care. His first touch goes to Ireland. You know what I mean? Like, it's so, yeah. So that's why you saying that, Max, I get it. I wouldn't put him on the list just because he's gotten us points, and technically that's better. That's a better bargain than these others. But yeah, the first touch thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Definitely.
But the other last name on the list, and tell me if it's fair to put someone with as decorated a past as Marco Materazzi on the list.
I think it's sent off for Everton. Oh, he amassed a couple of red cards in his appearances.
He only had 27 appearances.
Not his most famous red card. That would come a lot later.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. No, I don't know. That's a little bit before my time. But Ashley Williams. So, so
many from the last couple of years. Almost just being a kind of trial and error club with money.
Comes with spending money now. Like you like we're not used to it, but clubs do this all the time. Even like the better clubs will go, yeah, we've signed some absolute duds. But he came in for 9 million, did an okay job at first, and then devolved to the point where he was embarrassing the club like across Europe by, fighting with the Leon goalkeeper, and like in the league he was getting himself sent off deliberately, and just everything, he's got to be considered for me because we spent proper money on him, got about 6 months worth of playing out of him, and you wonder like the improved defence under Koeman, how much of that was Williams being more defensively sound than Stones, or just not having Roberto Martinez as the manager anymore. Would Stones, well, I think I was about to word this as a question, but there's no doubt in my mind that Stones, if he'd stayed, would have been much better defensively just by virtue of not having Martinez. Yeah. So you can't really pin the improved defence on Williams. I think he was a terrible buy.
I agree.
I think I look now and you look at what happened to Williams, you have to think he's a terrible buy now. You know what I mean? I do think he came in crap circumstances that didn't help him, but yeah, and I think he would have done better if Silva was here. But still, I mean, you only have the sample size which you have to look at. Can't really base these kind of things on what ifs. So yeah, the fact that he did put in a stretch of passable work, I think, does kind of make the argument for putting him off the list. But last year's really, really fresh and sensitive. Just saying. I remember Allardyce. And yeah, it was bad. So, so I guess that's it for our Everton's Worst Premier League Signings segment. And that is our final video segment. We are, if you're interested in listening to Terry take on Max in a battle of Everton wit and might, and if you know your history, it's a podcast segment. You can switch over from the video to the podcast right around now-ish if you want. If not, cool, you can continue watching me plug these guys and our channel. If you're digging our videos, please subscribe. Just over 1320 on the subs, so thank you very much. Slowly growing, which is rad. No one says it anymore. I don't care. I'm 40. If you want more Terry, check out his Twitter profile because he shows up on the Liverpool Echo fan jury. Max shows up on the Toffee Blues website. Both of those guys put analysis out there for the masses about Everton. Also, just check out the Toffee Blues website in general. A lot of analysis on there from a lot of contributors that come onto our channel and our podcast. Please follow the Toffee Blues on Twitter, Facebook, and the Instagrams. And that's all. No more plugging. I guess that's it for now. We will not be having a later week record session because I will be celebrating Thanksgiving with my family. So to the American Evertonians out there, happy Thanksgiving. And for the non-Americans, happy rest of the week in November. Yay. Guys, thanks so much. And we'll come back on the pod with our quiz. So, bye.